So, yeah, if we can start in the usual way by chanting the dedication of offerings. So what I'll do is we'll chant the dedication of offerings and then the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. This is our normal way to begin. It's the normal. This is the Theravada way of starting anything. You can bring anything. Go to the monastery. Spend the day at the monastery. The first thing you do, if you can, is to take the refuges and the precepts. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammang saranang gacchāmi, Sangham saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sangham saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sangham saranang gacchāmi. Pāṇātipātā Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinādāna Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kāmesu Miccāchara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Merya Majjapamadhatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibbutting yanti tasma silang visuddhaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is a source of happiness. Virtue is a source of true wealth. Virtue is a source of peacefulness. Therefore let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's good to remember that our meditation practice is about noticing our experience. It's not saying how the experience should be, but to notice how it is. So this is a good place, or the right place to begin, to come into to how is it right now? And how is it right now? It brings us to the experience of body and mind. That's what our experience is. And we're not choosing or not judging or following a preference as it should be this way or that way, but to notice is what we're doing. We're doing that much. And actually it doesn't take any doing at all to notice. It's the noticing is something that can we can just be present. So we can let go of the doing mind. It's not a doing activity. Noticing is simply being awake and present to the experience of how things are. We don't need to do anything to do that, to notice. In fact, what we can do is notice this sense of doing. If we feel like we have to do this meditation, then it's something we can notice. So we can experiment with that idea. So coming into the body, giving our attention to the body, then we might notice that as we bring our attention into the body that we interfere with the body in some way. We think, oh, now I've noticed the body, I've got to make it into a certain way. And that's a doing activity. I've got to make the body like this, some idea that we have of what meditation posture is. But just to bring our attention into the way the body is right now, without interfering, is what we're doing, really. Well, this is what this is what awareness is. You don't need to make it in a particular way to notice how it is. But what's amazing is that when we become aware of the body, it tends to straighten on its own. When we bring awareness into the body, we can feel it straightening and becoming more upright. And as we bring attention to the body, why would we want to lean one way or another? Why not be upright and balanced? So noticing, bringing awareness into the body is a way of establishing the right posture, an upright posture. We don't have to knock the body into shape to sit upright, but just being aware of it is enough. And what you can actually notice the body finding its own point of balance, its natural, upright, alert posture. We might notice tension, and if we do, then we can relax there. We can unclench that muscle, that tense area. We can deliberately unclench those muscles. See whether we can let the shoulders drop. See whether we can open the chest, relax the stomach. See whether that's possible. If we try to have an upright posture, we can create tension and just the opposite of relaxed and upright posture. Trying too hard. So just using awareness to establish an upright posture, we don't create a tense and stress in the body, but a much more natural and relaxed posture. And in the same way, we can relax the mind. Just almost as we would unclench a tight muscle, we can just unclench the busy mind, just perhaps using a mantra, relax. You can say that to yourself, just relax. Of course, it doesn't work for long, but it's an attitude of mind just to step back from the busyness of it that we bring with us, that we brought with us from the busy day, perhaps. Mindfulness is stepping back. It's a stepping back from the experience, so to notice how it is, we have to create a little space. A little space from which awareness for awareness to be present. As you would if you were to see something, it was too close, you have to step back a little in order to bring it into focus, just stepping back a bit. When you do sit and you meditate, the idea of meditation we all have, maybe what that idea is, and there may be an object that we're used to meditating with, and that's fine. If the breath is an object that you're used to, and to notice the inhalation, the exhalation. But just notice one inhalation and one exhalation. Just the present moment is all we need to be aware of. We don't need to try to do anything more than be present in the moment, the present moment. One breath in, one breath out, that's enough. Noticing our mental world, the world of thought. Noticing it isn't is nothing more than being present with what's happening right now. What is it? What's this experience right now? When we look at the experience, the object of the mind is simply that. What is the experience? What it's like? What's happening? We move away from the object that's creating the experience just to notice what the experience is. So if you have let's say, a story about the future, we just notice, oh, that's the experience of planning, of being born into the future. That's what that experience is. I know it. I can experience. That's what I'm experiencing. When we do that, the story about the future isn't the object of our attention any longer. It's the experience of thinking about the future that we're looking at. That's a different object. And of course, it's not sustained. The object isn't creating the experience, so the experience just passes. It comes to an end naturally. So when we notice our mental activity, by noticing it, we're not trying to get rid of it, but by simply noticing the experience, it naturally ceases by itself. Can't do otherwise, because there's nothing being added to. We're not being born into it anymore. We're just noticing it, and it ceases of its own accord. But of course, we might be born into another story that creates an experience, and we'll be aware of that. But it's interesting to notice how, with mindfulness, comes letting go quite naturally. Naturally follows stepping back, a natural inclination to let go. With mindfulness comes clear comprehension, what we call sati sampajanya, noticing it wouldn't have much value if it didn't come with seeing clearly. So the first step of seeing is to name something. So first of all, when we step back and notice our experience, we might name it, say, oh, that's the experience of anxiety, or that's the experience of joy. This is the experience of restlessness. This is the experience of sleepiness. So by naming it, we get a sense of, helps us to understand what we're experiencing. But then we let go of the name. The second stage, the next stage, is to let go of the name, because the name gets in the way. So first of all, it can help to give us some clarity to our experience, but then let go of the name and notice what it really is. What's it really like to be restless? By naming things, we can dismiss them instead of investigating them. It can be a way of pushing away. Now I've named it, I can get rid of it. Rather than by naming it, we can use that as a first step to investigating what it is. How does it feel? So we understand it properly. When we understand something, it doesn't need a name. It's much more than the name we gave it. We might discover it's got many different facets. So we can see it from many different aspects. Perhaps the physical expression of that, as well as the mental. The same thing, such as a feeling of restlessness in the body and the restless mind. Or sleepiness in the body and a sleepy mind. And investigate those, how they come together. So to do that, it's helpful to let go of the name, come right into the experience, and really experience it as it is. When we sustain our attention on something, let's say restlessness, we notice how it changes. We're not trying to fix it, get away from it, and say it shouldn't be this way, but by sustaining our attention on the experience, we begin to notice how it changes, continually changes. We're not trying to get rid of it, trying to control it, interfere with the experience, simply to notice. We might notice that although we weren't deliberately trying to calm down, it's a natural outcome of stepping back, of being aware. Awareness is associated with letting go. And so the mind becomes calm quite naturally. We don't have to try to be calm. If you stay with the experience, whatever it is, you're not buying into that experience. You're simply observing it as a natural calming. You naturally feel a sense of ease and spaciousness as we do this. And it's just fine just to rest in that experience of calm, ease, and to whatever extent you might experience it. If we try too hard to make sense of our experience, that's just an expression of the restless mind. It's enough to be present, to be aware, to know the experiences like this. Investigation isn't reasoning things out or analyzing things. It's simply being aware and noticing, being present, being open to see things clearly, and making sense of them will come to you. You don't have to try to make sense of it. As truth will be revealed quite naturally. So I hope that as I'm talking, or maybe afterwards, you'll come up with some questions and put them in the chat if you'd like to do that. It's quite a nice way to receive questions. Although you're also free to unmute yourself to ask. But if you want to fire questions in as I go, it's quite nice. So I'm just remembering what I just said. I was saying that I was talking about investigation. How perhaps take an example. When you're experiencing restlessness, so how would you investigate restlessness? Well, you don't need to analyze it to understand it, do you? You can experience it. You can know how it feels in the body. You can know how it feels in the mind. And when you rest with sustained awareness on that experience, then you'll see how it changes. So sustained awareness, that's important, something significant. So sustaining our awareness means not rushing to one object or another, but taking just that one object, so that the experience that's prominent. So this is my practice. I'm not choosing, I'm not determining when I start my meditation what the meditation object's going to be. That doesn't worry me. I don't think about that. But this evening I noticed restlessness. And so I sustained my awareness on restlessness. That meant I stayed with that experience to the exclusion of other experiences. So I took restlessness as my object because that was what was prominent. And I noticed how it felt in the body. At first it was I could feel quite shaky. The body was quite shaky. And I could have created anxiety about that. I could have thought, what will people think? If I start to shiver and shake, I'm feeling a bit chilly, and I think shivering and I was on the edge of shivering. I thought, what if I could think that way. What if I became a sort of shaking jelly with restlessness, and people could see this kind of state. But it didn't. I just sustained my awareness on restlessness, and noticed that feeling of how the body was almost shaking. And by sustaining, not because I was sustaining my awareness, but simply because it's the natural way of things to change. Over time, the restlessness diminished, and the body calmed down, and it's as though a sense of calm came from outside. You think, well, where's that? You could think, where's that come from? Because I didn't create it. I didn't make that happen. But it just came by itself. But what is it? Just a natural, the way things are. Things change. And when we sustain our awareness on something, we what I mean is, our determination, if you like, is to see it through to the end. So we don't look away, we just keep on looking there, right there. And then it reveals its own truth. So this investigation isn't a rational, intellectual, analytical process. You don't need to analyze a restlessness, you can experience it. And when you experience it and really go into it, then you can understand it. Even though we didn't use the intellect to understand it with. We used the intuitive experience of it to understand it. The understanding came to us. That's the amazing thing. It's as though the understanding comes to us rather than us making it. It's not a doing activity. We're not doing it. It does it to us. It's weird. So we could take in, let's say, the experience of anxiety and just staying with that. And we wouldn't understand anxiety. In time we'll understand what that is. The truth will come to us. We don't have to reason it out. We don't have to rationalize it. Because if we do that, we interfere with, we interfere with the reasoning mind. We bring our conditioned way of thinking, what we think we already know. That's the one I say we have to let go of the label. When you label something, it comes with the baggage of the conditioned mind. We say it's anger, or we say it's pain. And when we say these things, we bring the emotional baggage with us, or the conditioned way of thinking. So it can be helpful to name, to get a sense of, I'm feeling angry. But it's good to let go of the name, so that we can really experience what it is. And we'll know anger without the name. We'll know what it is. It doesn't need a name. It's as though the truth will come to us. If we tell it what it is, we're not really listening. If we listen, so an inner listening, a listening to the body and mind. And what do you realize? It's interesting, isn't it? This seeing happens by itself, and looking is a sort of a doing activity. You can look, and if you're looking and looking, you're looking as though you were trying to see, but you're not really seeing anything by looking too hard. But seeing is more of a stepping back, isn't it? You get a bigger picture. You can see more easily when you're not looking too hard. It's interesting, isn't it? So yeah, I like to play with these words. I use them as an investigation. So I might think, it might come to me, what's the difference between looking and seeing? And then I do think it's really significant, this difference between doing and being. What's the difference between doing and being? Doing my meditation, or just being present? doing my mindfulness practice is a quite a different experience to just being mindful. The question here, Thank you for your reflection. Can you give us some tips on how to sustain awareness and not fall into the trap of thinking in terms of me, myself, and I? Well, with sustained awareness, then you'll notice the thinking pattern of creating a self around it. That's something that we can notice. So, for example, if with our awareness we notice that we're planning our holiday, then we can notice that sense of the self that we create that's already going on holiday. You can actually see the self-creation in how you buy into the future. And so you can really see this in terms of me, myself, and I, because the me, myself, and I is something that's being created in that moment when we're buying into the holiday, the future, what's going to happen in the future. Or it might be just there's something about the past, sort of buying into the past and recreating that self who experienced the person, the person who experienced the upsetting experience, for example, that we remember the upsetting experience and we create the person, the sense of self around it. And it's interesting to investigate. How do we do that? Why? How does that happen? And the sense of self is always associated with the grasping mind. If you look at the sentence, I want, wanting's got an I in it, hasn't it? And if I don't want, it's got there's the I again. Wanting and not wanting comes with a sense of self. There is an I wanting or an I not wanting. Inevitably, the self and the grasping mind come together. So the selves manifest in the grasping mind. And that's interesting because it means that it's impermanent, doesn't it? Because whatever we grasp won't last. Whatever we run away from will come back. So whatever, we attach the self to the grasping mind, of course it won't last. The self that we're born into, the birth of that self, it arises, it's got to cease. So it can't be sustained. So we're born into the story. It will come to an end. It can't not. And that's why we talk about the self as being impermanent. It's something that arises. This is the way what I think. It arises with the grasping mind. So it's born into what we want and what we don't want. And then when it dies, when that grasping comes to an end, there's nothing for the I to attach to. It seeks something else. And I can't tell you what comes first, whether the I comes before the wanting or the wanting and then the I follows. I don't know which one comes first. Whether it just seems to, it's like the self manifests in the grasping. You can notice this happening. So when we sustain our awareness, and not falling into the trap of thinking in terms of me and myself and I, that's what awareness will present to us. Will be the opportunity to notice that when we fall into that trap of thinking in terms of me and myself and I, then we'll notice it through sustained awareness. And then that poses the question, so what's there before that happens? What is it then? Is it possible to have sustained awareness and not have the self and the grasping? And of course, that's right. It is possible, and that's where we're heading. Is that's the direction of travel. That we're heading in that direction to the experience of just being aware, of knowing that without having to create, without having to grasp, without having to create, without having to make it into anything, without having to be born into it, just to know things as they are is enough. We don't have to buy into them, but as our whole experience, and I think it's to talk in those terms as that in those terms that there's an experience of not being born into something, but simply to notice it, is to describe something which is very different to the normal way of thinking. Our normal experience is so much, we were born into this world, and our whole life is about being born into, and we're seeking out experience the whole time. This is the habit of the mind, and so it's a bit like to talk in terms of that not being, that there's a world, not a world, but that there's a that isn't, and that's something that we're doing, and we don't have to. To talk in those terms is seen quite foreign and almost like you're talking a different language because we haven't known anything else. So to say it's optional, we don't have to be born into the future, we don't have to be born into the past. To say that's optional is a bit quite shocking, because we didn't think there was ever a choice about it. It's just something we've done all our lives. And so that's why mindfulness is the essence of Buddhist teaching. The Buddha pointed to mindfulness as it's in the center of his teaching, because with mindfulness we have that opportunity to step back from our experience. We can get off the wheel, if you like. We have the opportunity to step out of the addiction to being born into the grasping mind. And that gives us an incredible opportunity. But it's only with mindfulness that we can do that. There's no other way. There's no other way to see things clearly, but you have to step back from them. And then when you see things more clearly, well, it's a gradual process, and a gradual, almost like when in the snow, when you start this little snowball off, it's very small, but if you keep pushing it down the slope, it will gradually get bigger and bigger. And this is what happens with mindfulness. It gathers its own impetus and builds up. The snowball becomes bigger, and it's not so difficult, but at first it's quite difficult. Well, yeah, if you experience, somebody said during my meditation my chest started to get really tight and I couldn't breathe. And does this mean anything? Yes, it means that you need to breathe. I think that it's amazing. I found, for me, I can only talk from my own experience, and having talked to people who've come to me, and I've discovered sometimes you just need to breathe. Yeah, it's important. It's helpful to breathe. You can, if you're experiencing this, a sense of tightness in the chest and a sense of not being able to breathe, well, really put an emphasis on breathing as a way of just breathing taking some deep breaths and really give attention to the breath. And you'll find it that you can relax. It will relax. It will relax you. A friend, somebody who brought a friend to somebody to me. A friend of mine brought somebody. They thought that I might be able to help them. When they came, they were panting for breath. They couldn't hardly breathe. They were so tense and anxious, stressed. They could hardly breathe, and so I just sat them down and taught them to breathe. There's no teaching. It's just say, how about breathing in, breathing out? Let's do a few deep breaths, and that person is so grateful to me. I can't believe it. I didn't tell them anything, but all it is, sometimes we just have to breathe, and learning to breathe can help. Seems the most simple thing, but it's incredibly beneficial. And of course, we can do that at any time, any opportunity, any. The opportunity to breathe is always with us, isn't it? So whenever we feel tense, stressed, tight, then taking a few deep breaths and giving our attention to that can be a very good way to let go and to let go. And it's incredible what an effect that can have. Has anyone else got any questions? I'm wondering what the person meant who asked this question. It was Mark. What were you meaning, Mark, when you said, can you give me some tips about how to sustain awareness and not to fall in the trap of thinking in terms of me, myself, and I? What were you thinking of when you wrote that? Because I think to me, I mean, it's I don't connect sustained awareness with falling into the trap of thinking in terms of me and myself and I. I think if any sustained awareness is giving us the opportunity to notice that sense of creating a self, rather than a trap that might cause us to fall into a sense of self. So what is it that you had in mind? Oh, got messages. He's writing. Oh yeah, say sorry, the host doesn't allow you to unmute. I'm sorry about that. Maybe the host couldn't. Maybe the host could, but never mind. So during my meditation, my skin became very sensitized. It was like I could feel the pores which responded to sound by slight pain. What is this? Amazing, isn't it? What we can experience.
Sorry, Martin, they can unmute.
Oh, you can unmute. That's good. So yeah, okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy. Sorry, Martin.
Oh yes, Mark. Yeah.
I was really just reflecting on how to sustained awareness. So if you're presented with, my wife might congratulate me on a lovely meal that I've cooked for her, and I start to swell with pride about that, and then And then I think no, just sort of stay with that. Just feel it. Don't use the intellect as you've just been saying. Don't think about it. But I'm not able to do that for very long before I fall back into the trap of thinking about me and thinking in terms of me. So the question was about have you got any tips for sustaining that sustained awareness, really? That makes sense.
Well, it is practice, but what you can practice. So as I was saying in meditation, with taking any one object. So I chose restlessness because that's what I was experiencing, and it just filled most of the meditation time because I was just noticing that, and I just stayed with it. So that was sustained awareness on a particular thing. Now, sustained awareness could be a broader experience, and without choosing any particular thing, it could be broader and not specific, but still sustained. So there's but you can. I think it's practice, sustaining your awareness on things. But I'd like to go back to what you were talking about, the example you gave, which was that feeling of being praised. So, we get wonderful teachings come from the feeling of being praised and the feeling of being blamed. They're wonderful teachers. And noticing that is fantastic. It's a fantastic opportunity to practice mindfulness. Just to notice the experience. And not to criticize, not to blame, not to say that it's wrong or right, not to feel like we're losing and missing, just because if we feel good about it when people praise us, it feels like this. It's how it feels. That's a natural thing, isn't it? And when people criticize us, it's quite natural to not to feel good about it. It's understandable. It's the natural, a natural response if we like to be appreciated. For example, it's lovely, that's what we would like that. But if somebody criticizes, we don't feel appreciated. If somebody says to you, if your wife said to you, that was a horrible meal, you would feel, oh, no, I tried hard, and look, I didn't get much thanks for that. And you could, just the opportunity to notice these experiences. We don't have to put them right. I think one of the things that's useful to remember is we don't have to there's nothing that we have to fix or put right because we feel pleased or we feel disappointed. We don't need to criticize ourselves for feeling pleased when somebody praises us, or to criticize ourselves for bursting into tears because somebody's criticized us. Or feel pleased because somebody praised us, or feel, because we've reacted in particular, we feel disappointed because somebody criticized us. We don't need to be critical about those things. All we're doing is noticing that feeling. And when we notice, yes, it's disappointing, but it's not, we don't need, what we don't need to do is to create suffering out of it, because awareness isn't suffering, is it? It's noticing. We're not, there's no reason for suffering to arise just because we're aware. But if we're critical of what we experience, then we'll create suffering out of it. Either because we're praised, we feel we shouldn't feel good about this, we're this pride or something, or we've been criticized, we shouldn't feel bad about it, because if I'd have, I've been practicing Buddhism for so long, I shouldn't be feeling upset because somebody criticized me, something like that. Well, that's not the way to just be practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is just non-judgmental awareness.
Thank you.
I'm just reading a question. Yeah, that's amazing. It's a very long question. Somebody's either very quick. Oh, it's Kay. Got very quick at typing to type such a long question. I can't read it. Perhaps I can't read it all. Well, I'll have a go. I found it. She says, I really found that what I said about right attitude last couple of weeks ago was very insightful to me. So when I felt angry a few days ago, I tried to stay with it rather than adding more fire to the anger. Or with more thoughts or pushing it away. I found it really painful as I just watched it, as I just wanted it to stop, and almost overwhelming, and wondered whether I should have faced the pain, i.e. the pain of the being overwhelmed, or the anger. I found it really painful as I just wanted it to stop, and I wondered whether I should have faced the pain because it was overwhelming. After a few hours, it passed and I felt a great sense of relief. Yeah. Oh, a sense of great calm, and that helped me sleep better. My issue was with how difficult it was to accept the anger and to be present with it. Wow. Yes. But it takes courage, doesn't it? And, well, you know, it's like if you're claustrophobic and you can't get into a lift, then or if you've got a phobia about spiders or something, well, one of the ways to treat phobia is to do it in small steps. So you get used to, you get courage by being in a small space for a short time, and then you go into a small space for a longer time. So you gradually become, you reduce your phobia by taking small steps, and then overcome it. And so I think this is the way the Buddha taught. So that if we have been able to accept anger and be present with it once, then it will get easier because you've done it once. So you know that you can do it. So then you know that you'll be able to do it again. So that's how it does get easier. But it takes that initial courage to face up to fully experience. Because what's happened and what you're describing here is seeing it through to the end. So after the anger passed, a few hours later, there was a sense of great calm. So that willingness to stay with it until it ceased by itself. So you didn't make it come to an end. You didn't make it cease. You saw it through to the end. And because of that, a sense of great calm came. You didn't make yourself calm. It wasn't something you did. It's something that happened to you. It was simply the sustained awareness of that, being willing to stay with it through to the end. You saw it to its completion. And that was a sense of great calm. Now that's a great teaching, a great lesson to you, isn't it? And now you know that's an incentive. You having done that once, you know it's possible, and it's worth doing it again. So there's a really wonderful case study. If you don't mind being a case study, it's very nice of you to put that into chat, because it's yes, it was only to me, not to everyone, but yes, it's a lovely case study of how Kay put that into teaching into practice. to, when she felt angry, she stayed with it rather than adding more fire to the anger with more thoughts of, or pushing it away. It was really painful, and she wanted it to stop, and it was almost overwhelming, but she chose to face the pain. And after the anger passed, after time, the anger passed a few hours later, yeah. And that helped me sleep better. Well, it would. And it's just, how difficult is that? Well, it's hard, but it's worth it. It's interesting you say that what I talked about 2 weeks ago was about right attitude. Yes, that's good. I listened to that too. It was recorded, and the Buddhist Society puts these things on the website, and you can go back and listen. And I found that very interesting. But what I thought I talked about was acceptance. Isn't that interesting? And I don't know, when I listen to this, I'll probably find I've been talking about, so I'll discover what I've been talking about. I don't know what it is yet. But that's the great thing about recording. And go back to it and think, oh yeah, that's what I was talking about. We're running out of time. I'm sorry about that. But what can you do? Where's the time gone? But I don't want to overrun, and because many of you may not have eaten yet, so I'll share the screen and we'll do the closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and I hope that you found some benefit for that, and hope you take something away with you.